Whoa, all right. Well, that worked. Um, Welcome to Punk Law 101, everybody. I'm just gonna play around with some stuff for 2 seconds. Uh, huh. Groovy. All right. Howdy, everybody. I'm currently waiting on a friend. My name is Walter. If you are a fan of my YouTube channel, when I do draft fights and all the football stuff, if you've listened to Punk Law 101 before, congrats. It's been a long, long time. I'm hopefully going to be joined by Mr. John Rinaldi. I don't know when or if you don't know who John Rinaldi is, well, hopefully you get to meet him tonight. Still waiting on the response. We were supposed to meet up at 10:30. But I mean, come on, why would we expect anything? Anyway, today I'm talking about the Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing because everybody's talking about it, and I've watched every second of this trial now, fully caught up. All the seasons back to back. My Netflix subscription has not been canceled yet. No, it really does feel like it's a TV show that's on hiatus, and we're all getting a chance to catch up before the second season goes. First season was clearly Johnny Depp presenting his side of the case. Second season, we just started Amber Heard presenting her side of the case, and I gotta tell you, I didn't really know that usually defamation cases are they're hard to win, and when this trial started, I did not think I think I would have given Johnny Depp maybe a 1 in 10 shot of winning, because you have to prove that the allegation is false. And it was committed, and in Johnny Depp's case, that was committed with malice. That it was, that it caused damage to his reputation. That that there was damage to his reputation, and then again that it was published out there, and that you could easily, in the article that is supposedly the article doesn't actually mention him by name. So there's a lot of and it's a very vague article, and the more and more I've sat with this case, the more and more I think Johnny Depp, especially now that we're into Amber Heard's territory of everything, the more I think Johnny Depp has a shot of winning this. So if you're not familiar, this is a good time to catch up. I was hoping to clue my friend Mr. Rinaldi, and we'll also maybe talk some SCOTUS stuff if he pops on. Check in to see if there's any shot of him popping on. So if you don't know, this is Amber Heard over here. I've seen some of her movies. Drive Angry, one of my favorite beloved movies. It's a deep cut. But listen, the quality of a movie is not the quality of the person. That's I think Plato said that. That's her attorney. It's actually one of her better attorneys right there, I believe. I can never remember his name. It starts with an F. It's like Fairborn or Fayborn. He has the least memorable name of the three attorneys that have seemed to be representing her. He also seems to be the most competent. So that's kind of how it's been going. Go ahead. Well, this is actually just opening argument, first day of trial. We are now at day 15. This has been going on for a good 3 weeks, because we've only had, usually they're going only 4 days a week up to this point. We are at the opening arguments for the trial, and it's actually,
and for reasons that Mr. Depp will personally explain to you.
So if you don't know, this is Johnny Depp. I think you guys know that one. That's the easy character. Remember, in this, he's one of the two co-stars, and actually one of the two most famous people in this trial, maybe the most famous person in this trial. I know Amber Heard is pretty famous in her own right for playing characters that people don't remember.
So on May 21st,
don't roast her. That's
Depp
horrible.
came
There's
by the
plenty of
apartment
roasting to be
that he
happening
shared
in
with
this
Ms.
case,
Heard in the
believe me.
Eastern Columbia
But so
building,
right
or the
here, I'm
ECB,
talking over
as some
Mr.
people
Benjamin
would.
Chew.
On
This
May
is Benjamin Chew. He's kind of the lead guy on this case. Now, if you don't know, if you haven't checked it out, Johnny Depp has a lot of attorneys. I mean, this is costing him some real money here. Some of these people are attorneys, some of these are support staff. But you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is going deep. This is a deep cuts lineup. I think at my count, we've had 7 different attorneys on the Johnny Depp side. The two main ones you will remember from this case, Camille Velasquez. She's going to be the one crossing. I say crossing like she's going to double cross. But she's the one who's going to be cross-examining Amber Heard. And that's the lady right here. She also does Johnny Depp's direct testimony, so that's when you were testifying. Your side has the ball. We'll put this in sports analogies, folks. Currently, we've had the first half, right? And Johnny Depp's team has pretty much been playing offense the whole first half of this game. Johnny Depp's main guy, I would say he is he's the head coach. He's the head coach. Johnny Depp is I would say Johnny Depp's the quarterback, and he's the head coach. And these are some star players. I think Camille is definitely one of the stars of this show. This is the Patriots, right? Johnny Depp is Tom Brady, and Benjamin Chew is Billy Belichick, right? And if you don't know sports, to put it in Pokemon terms, I can't. I have Pokemon terms, but I'm not quite sure how this would translate to Pokemon. Digimon, the trap cards. Yu-Gi-Oh! How much on Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't have that much of Yu-Gi-Oh! Knowledge. Anyway, another couple of. This is one of the attorneys who's done a lot more of the depositions, so you'll hear her voice a lot more than you'll actually see her during the trial. I don't know the rest of the attorneys' names. Johnny Depp's team has a big roster. I think he actually has 2 to 3 times as many attorneys working on his side of the case. Meanwhile, kind of strange because actually Amber Heard's side has 2 different law firms working on this case. Nonetheless, I'm kind of digging where this trial's going.
And got her
again, we're back to Amber Heard.
Instead, as you can imagine, the media storm was instantaneous. You will hear about and see some of that media coverage, which published pictures of Ms. Heard walking into court and other pictures supposedly showing.
So each side had two attorneys do their opening statements. Here we have Mr. Benjamin Chew, like I said, the Bill Belichick of this team. You can even say Camille Velasquez is Tom Brady on this as well. I would think it's Johnny Depp and that Camille might be Gronk. You could flip that. It's fine. But either way, this is a strong Patriots-level roster. I am not a Patriots fan, but I've acknowledged that over the 20 years prior to Tom Brady leaving the team, he was very special for them.
Abuse of a woman. The evidence will show that Mr.
That was a lie. And the evidence will show that Ms. Heard portrayed Mr. Depp as a representative of abusers.
This is Camille Velasquez.
The agent.
Man, they got attorneys upon attorneys. Look at this row. This is all his people, I think. Good amount of it is his people.
And more than just
these are attorneys in sport. Like these are all attorneys, I believe. I know she's an attorney. She's actually done a couple of the direct testimonies in the first half when Johnny's team had the ball. They have a good strategy here. They break up the opening statement. Benjamin Chew, who has been the guy who's been arguing a lot of the motions, he's I often feel like I'm watching an episode of Boston Legal here. This is actually this is Amber Heard's tweet that where she published the article. She said, "Today I published this op-ed in the Washington Post about the women who are channeling their rage about violence and inequality into the political strength despite the price of coming forward." She announces a role with the ACLU. The ACLU has been, was the one who kind of helped her write this article. It was very much a tie-in collaborative work. It came out along the time that she did Aquaman, or as Amber Heard's attorney called it, Aquaman, the Rastafarian superhero. Everybody. Aquaman, man, he's a man. All right, man. I actually would have loved to see Aquaman. I think that should be the next one. All right, it's Aquaman, man. So yeah, it's all tied to this lovely. I'm not gonna go through the whole opening statement because I feel like you guys could go ahead and watch it. It's fine. Their opening statement's pretty good. It lists out everything pretty well. They do a good job here. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Camille Vasquez, and she does do Johnny Depp's direct testimony later on, the one that we all see. That I think a lot of people got hooked from Johnny Depp's testimony. This is a guy who's been trending on TikTok, Mr. Rottenborn. He's actually not as bad of an attorney as people make him sound. There's that whole video of him objecting to his own question. He definitely has a not great demeanor about him, but in the opening, he's fine. He very much explains his side of the case. He's got a very methodical approach, a very strategic approach. But then again, during cross examinations, he tends to get a little combative with everybody. And in fact, that's her whole team, except for Fayborn, who I pointed out earlier. Fayborn's been a pretty consistently, I believe, her best attorney. But he's also the guy playing running back. Meanwhile, the other two are playing offensive line, and he's just getting hit in the backfield every chance they can get. So yeah, this is one of the top two attorneys for Amber Heard. And again, he makes some pretty good arguments here. He kind of rephrases a lot of it. And they go through a lot of the elements of defamation. Rephrases the article as her reporting domestic violence, which sounds very convoluted. Again, he breaks down the statements. He really likes bringing up the fact that they have this article here, a transformative moment for women. They use the print article, not the digital article. I think the reason why they use the print article is the digital article is the one that on the top, their headline is, I spoke out against sexual abuse against women and Hollywood. The Hollywood basically told me to go pound dirt. Although I don't get how that's true because she ended up being an Aquaman too. She didn't lose her role there. We do eventually hear more audio that comes out from this trial, but also a lot of this audio and video has been going around for a bit the last couple of years. Yes, Johnny Depp has fought this before in the UK, but Amber Heard was not a defendant in that case. She was just the witness, and the burden of proof was different there too. So I'm going to see if he popped in finally. He has not. I'm just going to keep riffing then and doing what I got to do because I'm hoping I didn't lose anything on this. Let's see. So yeah, they seem to want to rely on this printed version of the article. Didn't really quite I get it because the printed version's missing one of the three major statements that they are saying is now here's the thing. They're fighting back, and in fact they will eventually try to dismiss they do file a motion to dismiss halfway through the trial after Johnny Depp rests his case. And one of the things they focus on is that they believe that Amber Heard didn't write the title of the article, that it was the Washington Post who writes the titles of the article. And Johnny Depp's team, if you saw earlier, made the argument, well, that might be true, but in that, remember I showed you the tweet from earlier, Amber Heard retweeted the article and endorsed it. And in that endorsement of it, in the endorsement of the digital article, she's endorsing the title of it. I think that argument works well until you start bringing up this, then all of a sudden she tries to double down and goes towards that. Actually, he did sexually assault me. Kind of a strange strategy, right? Like, if you're going to say, like, no, I wasn't talking about Johnny Depp and I wasn't talking about sexual abuse, I was talking about, like, abuse against women, and that's of a sexual nature. But then all of a sudden you're also bringing up a lot of these sexual abuse allegations that were not brought up in the TRO. I don't believe they were brought up in the trial in the UK because it was not a pertinent issue in the trial in the UK. It makes it kind of, it's kind of hard to argue one way and then go the other direction, right? So again, we are currently 2 days into Amber Heard's testimony on her side of the case, and we'll jump through a few of these. Like, again, I want to go over the cast of characters here. Rottenborn, and I mean, he's famous. TikTok has made him famous. He was the one who cross-examined Johnny Depp. So that's when a lot of attention was getting paid to this case, was when Johnny Depp was, on cross-examination and retorting to him and coming off very likable for a guy who was being a little combative. But because Johnny Depp is this very, again, well-known, likable character, he's done pretty well holding his own in cross. This is the woman that I think has tanked a lot of Amber Heard's case, if Amber Heard even had a case. Because also, I don't think Amber Heard. I think Amber Heard has tanked her own case in certain aspects of it as well. We'll go over it a little bit more. She's the one who does quite a bit of the direct in Amber Heard's part of the case, especially in the again, when with her expert witness and then her actual individual testimony. I don't have any problems. I do have a lot of problems. She fights with the judge a lot. Like stupidly. If she doesn't agree, she's the one who objected when they, for instance, asked, I believe it was Johnny Depp's agent, what role was he going to play in Pirates of the Caribbean. And before he answered, she goes, objection, like as if we didn't all know he was going to play Captain Jack Sparrow. Again, objecting to stupid things. By the way, something that was asked and answered by a different witness earlier that they didn't object to. I don't know what was the point of that other than to just be spiteful. So there's moments where I just don't get the strategy here. And she comes off as very likable. This is also doesn't come off as very likable. She's the person who's famous for the Muffin Man bit, even though I actually think she did really well going up against Dr. Curry. I know Dr. Curry's getting a lot of I would say a lot of fan favoritism on the webs. I thought Dr. Curry had some issues as far as going to bias. Now I think she answered them okay. I kind of wish on direct they tried to rehabilitate her a little bit more, but I think she'll actually be coming back on rebuttal towards the end of this, because I do think she is available for recall to rebut Dr. Hughes' testimony, who's the expert that Amber Heard had. So what day is this? Was Depp too? Where are we at? So first witness was Johnny Depp's sister. She came off okay. I don't think she was the most credible witness, but I think she was there to give a little bit of background. I think that the family background. She testified for the rest of day one into day two, and again, I think she was fine. I think she came off like a loving older sister who had concerns, who didn't always agree with who her brother was seeing, but again, like, what's she gonna do? Yes, her life is directly tied into Johnny Depp's. She does do a lot of work revolving around Johnny Depp's production company. And listen, like, that happens when you're that big. The people who you could trust, you can trust family. And, that was somebody who he really trusted. She testified about the what's it called? The prenup agreement, that it was her, she tried really pushing, him to get the prenup. Which was the basis for the argument for one of the major violent incidences that happened, specifically one that happened in Australia while Johnny Depp was filming Pirates 5. Again, I think she came off as a good person for the foundation of the case. If you're not presenting Johnny Depp first, somebody who knows him very well right after the opening statements, and you're not going to remember how, of her bias, because everybody, she's family. Like, that's the person, probably the most biased person on Johnny Depp's side, is the woman who is his sister, who is involved with the work that he does. That's not, I don't think bias is necessarily a bad thing, as if you get out and you say, okay, like, it's true, there's a bias here, but there's corroborating witnesses all throughout Johnny Depp's side of the case, and I think that's what's going to end up working for Johnny Depp. He's got third-party witnesses, and he's got people who are not 100% invested in him being successful. So another person, the next person he puts up is, I think everybody loves this dude, Isaac Bruchel. the artist that Johnny Depp rents out lets live in his house, in his penthouse. And like, I have friends like this. If I was a millionaire, I have friends like this guy who I would be like, yeah, I want this guy living in I have no problem with him living in my house. I like it. Like, it's cool. Like, I got the money. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to support you, my friend. And I would do this for my friends. If I had $100 million, I would 100% do this. I dig him. I kind of, he does come off as kind of credible at certain points. And actually, I think his testimony, it's weird because he can come off as very biased in a moment, because you're sitting there saying like, oh, this is a guy who his entire life is also tied into Johnny Depp's. Johnny Depp is literally the guy who is paid for him to, to paint and to live. And listen, when you have a friend, but he also lived in the same building. He lived in one of the penthouses. That he was a neighbor to what was going on with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. He witnessed Amber Heard the day of the last, quote unquote incident. There's a few incidents that really get reported in here. You probably need a timeline. Something like, the timeline here is more messed up than Avengers Endgame. It doesn't always quite make sense, especially when Amber Heard's side kind of starts presenting her case. You almost get completely lost. I can kind of remember the incidences when it comes down to one, location. So the incidences that happen at the penthouses, the time frame within its connection to how close to the TRO. So there's an incident in May, which is what he's testifying to, that he saw her the next day. A lot of talk about whether Amber Heard has faked a lot of stuff regarding this case. I'm going to pull up her testimony because I think her testimony is what the thing is going to be, that if you believe her, you like her. And then you probably think like, okay, like, but like so much of the evidence doesn't seem to go her way. A lot of the evidence that she provides, now there's also an issue where her side did not present discovery on the metadata that was supposed to be turned over to Johnny Depp's side. This is why you're hearing certain reporters who are tied to her, like Eve Barlow, reporting that, hey, like, they shouldn't be, they're keeping out all this very helpful evidence. But if it's not verifiable, why would they let it in when you guys didn't do your job? You were supposed to send this stuff over to them 6 months ago, and now it's too late, so you're done. You can't complain when you didn't play by the rules, and that's what happens when you don't play by the rules in the court. Your stuff don't make it in. I think we've all, like, anybody who's made it big has a friend like this. I think I'm not big enough to. I want to be that friend. I don't think I have a friend that will ever be that way, where he's making millions upon millions. But there's guys who I think that, like, I would appreciate if they did it. But yeah, I'm very. I found his testimony kind of interesting. Like, it gave you a little bit more background. He knew Johnny since Florida, and he saw a couple of the incidences where they've been in arguments before. He knows them pretty well. I do wonder. I'm going to see if another friend of mine wants to pop on. But I think but in Cross, he actually ends up doing something that I think you get like a real. It shows the problems that Amber Heard's attorney's been having, which is they ask a lot of open-ended questions. They're not concise with their phrasing, and it ends up leading to things blowing up in their face and not being able to control the environment. Again, this is just like, this is the guy you see a lot of cool.
4 years?
What were your impressions of Mr. Depp while you were both living in Florida at the same time?
Oh, he's a sweet kid. A sweet guy.
Sir, wait, there's an objection.
Oh.
Thank you.
What his impressions were back then?
Or what's the relevance?
Just establishing the background and the relationship, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question, please.
Side, and you have Josh Drew on one side of the door. You got the two locksmiths with the door open, working on it.
So this is when he's testifying about when Amber had the locksmiths come in and change the locks. I guess when she was, when her and Johnny were starting to go through the divorce, she's filing the TRO. She's basically locking Johnny out of the penthouses, but she's not doing it to the one that he's in. And he saw her the next day, and they claimed that he had, Depp had hit Amber, and he saw her face, and he looked at her and he goes, "Well, I don't see where he hit you." So, I just got tagged in a post, everybody. I will be doing stand-up comedy. That's right. I'm not just an attorney. I am doing stand-up comedy at the Henry Thursday, June 9th. I will be hosting for Mr. Greg Stone, who will be headlining. He hosts the popular podcast Friday Night Greg. The show features some of the area's up-and-coming talent as well. I am one of the up-and-coming talent, I believe. I'm hosting it. Yes, so come out to the Henry if you're in Nyack, New York. I will also be at the place in New City in June as well, and then I will be at Diddy's in Suffern. I do a lot of things in Rockland County, New York. So a lot of joke-telling in Rockland, New York. So back to my friend Isaac over here, right? You can... Why does she look like she just joined the Navy? I don't get this picture. I don't get her look. I don't want
Or tint, correct? But again,
I would think she does, but for the most, I'll tell you what, over 3.5 years, living around each other, for the most part, she's not a makeup wearing person, completely natural. Her, Rocky, total great complexion, Texas natural girl next door, no makeup wearing, hanging out.
did Amber ever tell you she was not wearing makeup?
Did she ever tell me?
In any of those three and a
When?
half years that you're saying she wasn't wearing it around the house, did she ever say, "I don't have a stitch of makeup on"?
As many times as she's told me, I am wearing makeup, which is, I can't remember. So I don't know. Yeah, no. There's not one time I remember that or saying that.
Okay, so now let's go to the next day. I think that's the day you've got the 2 times that you saw her. She's with other people.
Yeah.
And she's either
I'm
going
going
out
to
or
switch this to like
coming in, correct?
1.25 or
First
1.5
time
speed.
they're coming in, and the second time they're going out.
So they've been out someplace before they're coming in, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation.
I'll allow it. You can answer the question, sir.
Oh, I have no clue.
Okay, but they're physically entering the house. In other words, they haven't been in the house, they're coming to the house from someplace, right?
Oh, I would have no idea. When I walked out, who knows? They might have been out and in twice before that, but I don't know. They could be coming from another apartment, coming, to go there, and I'm seeing them. It could be the second time that they're entering this apartment, or the first time, or the third time. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea.
And do you know, so you don't know where they were?
No,
And
of
so you
course
have
not.
no idea whether they were out in public someplace, correct?
No, of course the third. I won't know. Yeah, I don't
All
know.
right. And then the later time that you saw them that day, they were going out, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you know whether Amber had any Amica cream on that day?
Oh, yes, the Amica cream thing.
no,
That's
I
not
don't.
always...
And I'll try to make this faster. Do you know whether?
This is the thing that will get her.
Tell me where they were each standing.
As I'm watching and the way she's trying to...
Selling it, right?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to move the admission of those 2 limited.
This is Mr. Depp. The first gentleman looks familiar.
First, so that
Yes,
way I
please.
see what's going on. And I believe there's
Whether she knew, whether he hung up intentionally or accidentally?
it's the same way that I wouldn't know if, she didn't know that the telephone line got cut.
Right, okay. Don't have a stitch of makeup on?
Nothing. Like maybe if she was only dependent upon me to give from the Eastern Columbia building home and go across the street, get something to eat. And Johnny fell in love with her. I fell in love with her. She's totally respectful, gracious to me. He hangs up. She calls back again, and
Do you recall what you were doing that evening?
Penthouse Street. And as I'm walking down, who do I see?
Night before.
as I was walking up the first time.
You showed it the first time, you went like this, right? And then the next
yes,
time when
the
you said
kissing.
you did the kisses,
I
you
did
went like
remember this one.
What's your
When
typical
she's
way of
fighting with
kissing
him about,
women
well,
when you meet them?
this is like the
I'm
most
not
dumb thing.
understanding
Oh, the kissing
any
thing. Oh,
of
you do the
what
peck
you
peck,
just
or you
did.
just do the
Okay,
one peck.
so when you,
do you
I'll
think
just
the
leave it
jury
at Amber.
cares
When
about
you,
that much?
I take
that
it that you would
oh well,
regularly kiss
he
Amber
did
on
the
the
double
cheek when you
kiss
to say
thing.
hello
That's
and to say
Oh,
goodbye?
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
And tell us how you did that.
Objection,
Can you
Your Honor.
show us how you did that?
Which time? Regularly?
Did you have a different way of kissing her on the cheek different times? Or did you have a general way that you would greet or say goodbye to Amber with kisses?
Regular, it's a regular, you give a peck on the cheek, or, like you just touch cheeks and
Okay.
that's that.
So it's a pretty soft, it's kind of like almost a superficial one, or is it a really hard one on the cheek?
No, no, it's, just, you kiss someone on the side of the cheek.
Kate
At any time,
James.
correct?
Yes.
I think Kate James was another one that I think worked really well for Johnny.
You were based in Los Angeles when you were providing personal assistant services to Ms. Heard, right?
I have always lived in
One
Los
of my
Angeles since
favorite
1999.
interviews so far was Kate
So you
James.
didn't travel with Ms. Heard when she was out of town, correct?
That was another part of our agreement.
It always felt like she kind of intimidated Amber
She was out
Heard's
of town
attorney,
quite a
who
bit,
was
right?
who was interviewing her in the deposition.
Not really? How many weeks a year would you estimate Ms. Heard was out of town?
I don't know why I felt like that.
Clearly,
It's
I
also
didn't
because she has this
understand
kind of
the last
sexy
question you asked me.
dominatrix vibe.
Did you reach the conclusion that day that Ms. Heard hadn't experienced
I think she
anything
comes
traumatic?
off as very intimidating.
Over the
And
course of the day,
there,
I observed Ms. Heard enjoying the company
it's
of her
weird.
friends for several hours. That's all I have to
Amber's
say on
side
that matter.
brings her up
And
for a
would it be
little
odd
bit. And
for
I
someone
think
who's
it was almost a
experienced trauma to want
mistake,
to be
and
around
then there
her?
was an objection
Yeah,
by Johnny's side
I don't
that
know.
was overruled, and they could have kept
So
going.
in any event,
and I think
you said you sat around at the Chateau Marmont, is that
I
right?
think Elaine figured it
well,
out
she
that
was
it
the
probably
same
wasn't
too.
actually the best
Now, you were being
argument
paid for that
to
time,
be
correct?
going after the woman who
Not overtime. It
first
was a
off
Sunday. I was not being paid. no.
sounds like she
Did you,
stole a story from.
Did you avail
previously.
yourself of anything?
I'm going
at
to try
the
and pull
hotel?
up
Like,
the
did you
most
order any
recent
food?
Amber Heard, one of the 2 days of Amber Heard's.
Did you
I might
order?
I might have ordered some food for my
testimony.
son, actually, to be honest, now I think about it,
And
because he was
because there's
on
actually some of Amber Heard's stuff that I
or
really
something,
thought
so I might
was
order food for my son. I'm not a big eater.
intriguing.
Food is not a priority for me.
Would you put that on Ms. Heard's tab that day?
Just want
Everything
the
was on
live.
Depp's tab that day,
Just want the
so
full
no.
live.
On Johnny's tab?
Yes.
Let's bring up the document entitled, or that ends in 6151, please.
Johnny's with real estate.
When she wrote, "I love you," and you wrote, "Love you too, hon, won't be long, X." Was that just placating Ms. Heard?
Standard friendly text exchange in my role of work.
Were you trying to be supportive at all, or just placating her?
A bit of both, I guess.
Did you have any concern whatsoever about Ms. Heard's well-being that day?
No.
When was the first time you remember Ms. Heard? Remember giving that testimony?
Yeah.
So is it your understanding that Mr. Depp was inviting you over for...
So the weird thing with Amber Heard is she clearly did not like Kate James, right? And that, I believe that's why she fired Kate James. I don't believe it was, she told Kate James it had something to do with, I can't pay you anymore because I have to give money to my family, even though I'm officially married to Johnny Depp. I think it had more to do with, she's a pretty... Kate James seems like the kind of person that is a little intimidating for some people. Again, I think she was intimidating to Rottenborn in this deposition. She's very British. Like I said, British dominatrixy. She talks about her son having a nice relationship with Johnny Depp. And I think that might have also intimidated Amber Heard. I think there's a few different reasons why Amber Heard did not care for Kate James, and that's why she eventually moved on from Kate James as an employee. This is I don't want to deal with. Okay, so this is Law and Crime. I'm gonna pull up.
For example, witness statements and testifying.
Objection, compound.
I said, for example.
Overruled.
I don't remember. What, if any?
I had to write, I think I gave 7 witness statements under oath testimony. I sat on the stand for 4 days under mostly cross-examination. And up until this point, it was the hardest thing I had ever had to do.
See, I think this worked for her, and if this was all she had to say in this trial, it would have been great.
I'm going to take you back.
He sent me several gifts. He sent me a beautiful dress, one that I wore often. We're, talking about things and would continue the conversation into the trailer, often with the director. Bruce Robinson was his name. And then at one point, we talk about wine. It's another thing that Johnny and I shared in common, a love for wine, red wine. And we were talking about a kind of wine that I enjoyed, and I was, going on about how great this bargain wine was, and I didn't understand, how
I
much
find
more
it weird
sophisticated Johnny's taste in wine
her
was.
testimony and all
So I
this.
was going on about
She
the
seems
virtues of
very
Malbec or something, and I
much
brought
of
him a
the
bottle
opinion that
this wine.
not of the opinion.
And
She makes it start
I
sounding like, and this is
set
the
it
thing I
down,
think that
and
hurts her
at
case
some
is that there's
point,
never like a
I'm
moment
going
of
back to
like
get back
it's
to
like she
set,
takes every
and
opportunity
he kind of
to make Johnny
kicked
Depp
his,
seem like this evil,
foot up in
shady
the air and
character. And that sounds
basically
fun
kind of
for a movie
lifted
or a
the back of
script, but
my
it's not reality.
bathrobe up.
I think
And
as you get
Can I just
further
stop
through
you
her
there? Why were you
testimony,
wearing a
there's
bath-
bigger and bigger
because
plot
I was
holes,
doing a scene,
and
it was
especially when
period
it comes
film,
to
so
the
it's, took
assaults
place in the 50s.
and the
And
sexual
so I had
assault,
all
the
of
alleged
this,
sexual assaults, where it's kind of hard to
old
gauge
undergarments
where
that
it's all
were
coming
for
from,
that time era,
why is she focusing
on.
on this,
And the
what's
scene
going
involved
on,
me changing.
why do you have
so I had
70
all the
pictures of
costume
him
on.
sleeping,
And he kind of
but then you don't
picked
have
up the
any
back of
pictures
my robe
that really
with his
corroborate
boot,
any of your
and I kind of
horrific
turned
injuries that
around
you've
and,
alleged?
like,
And
laughed,
this is
like,
why
giggled,
Johnny Depp's side has let stuff come in.
I didn't feel, I just didn't.
There
I
is a
didn't
little bit of like
know what to
Kristen
make of it
Stewart
at the
to her,
time, and
which
it just kind of
where she's
just
trying to
kind of
feel
giggled
homey and
batted it
like
away
if I didn't
playfully,
know
and,
who this person was and I
he
haven't seen her
kind
in
of
movies and I
playfully
hadn't seen her
kind
do
of pushed me down
interviews,
this, like,
I
bed
probably would
sofa.
have said like, oh, I kind of I
that
buy
was in
that
the
she doesn't,
trailer.
she might just be socially awkward like a Kristen Stewart, but
Playful.
she never
and
came off like
flirtatious,
that
and he
before.
said,
at this point.
yum.
So that's kind of the
And
now, Gren,
next thing you know, he
a lot of
produced the
stress
film
testifying
and
before
was a
jury.
part of
So I'll give her that.
controlling the film and was responsible for different things than I was as an actor having a small part in it. And we went on this press tour, and
I don't
think
get
in
why
London,
she describes herself as an actor having a small part in it. I think she's trying to downplay everything with her,
and
and
for the rest of
I
the
mean, I guess
press
you
tour,
get that
we
no matter
were-
what you're gonna do. It always
it
does
was on.
feel like
I'll put it
everybody
that way.
wants to downplay everything
And
when it comes
how long approximately did the
to this
press
kind of
tour go?
stuff. But I just didn't.
I don't know exactly
I
how long
didn't
it lasted.
get why
I
she
think,
downplayed
there were
her part in the
press
movie. She's
engagements
the,
in
she was
city
the
for a few
co-lead
days,
in
and then another
Rum
city for a few
Diaries.
days,
She
and
was
there was a
the
break,
I get
and
it, the
then
love
there was another
interest, but
opportunity, I
it
believe.
wasn't
So
a
it was kind
small
of spread out
part in the
over-
movie.
over maybe
Just like it was,
a month, I'm
she's
guessing.
been in and she's
So
been in a
when you
significant
returned
amount
to
of
Los
movies.
Angeles, what, if anything, took place with any relationship with Mr. Depp?
What if anything?
Well, once we were back from the press tour,
One of
we had this,
Elaine's
whirlwind romance kind of just in
Elaine's
these
favorite
beautiful places
phrase
all
is
over,
"What if
and
anything?" If you've been
we're falling in
listening
love
to
and
this
not able
trial
to
long
really
enough,
show it because
You through 2012 and your relationship. Could you just describe for the jury a little bit about how that relationship evolved through 2012?
but she makes it sound like he was like a
It was always
predator,
intense. It didn't
like
become
creeping
intense. It
in
almost
on
started that
her
way.
and sending inappropriate gifts and
I
like he.
when I was
And there's
again,
an element that I guess people
I-
could empathize with that, and maybe that is true.
I felt that
But it doesn't feel
electricity
like
in my
that's
body. I
the
felt
reality
like
of the
butterflies. I
situation
couldn't,
as you get
you
through
know,
all this. You did end up
couldn't see
dating
straight,
him and then
practically. It was
marrying
just,
him
you know,
and falling in love with
was
him.
head
So
over heels in
why
love. And
why
he felt like that to
tilt
me.
it in
He
this
felt like
way of making
he
it
was also
start
in love.
out
I
with
didn't
this
feel
kind
like
of
he was
Weinsteinish
faking
vibe?
it. I felt like what
When
we had,
we
it
know
felt
that's
like
not
to
where
me
the
at the time,
story
there wasn't
goes. It's
any
not the
love like that,
story of
you know? I
your
mean,
relationship with him. He didn't trick
then,
you into
he
marrying
would-
him. He didn't trick you into
started to
dating
kind of do this
him.
thing again where he'd
And
disappear.
again, it just seemed
and he'd come
very
back,
weird.
And I remember at first when he first started drinking, I didn't really think much of it, but all of a sudden the behavior kind of started to go in line with the disappearing, and he'd come back and he'd just be different. And I'd say something and he'd accuse me of saying something else or saying it in a different way, or he would, it was mostly my clothing at the time and me working. That was the main thing. Like, I found myself trying to not talk about auditions because it would change the mood so dramatically. I tried to, he would make these comments about, whoring myself out, but do so in the context of me acting, and he would talk about other actresses who do my role in this way where they were worthless whores, that they were fame hungry, expletive, just this. The point is, it felt really dirty to be an actor. never mind that he was one. It was dirty that I wanted to do
But
this
here's the
job that I
thing,
wanted
like
to do, and
Johnny
I was
Depp
doing
has
the
been
job
an
of an
actor
actress. It was
for
everything
X amount of years.
every
I don't get
time I was
this
walking out of the
line
house,
either.
asked me,
And
"That's really what
maybe
you're
he
wearing,
is.
kid?"
Maybe
Oh, I
he
see.
is just a
I wore a
condescending
dress to an event once, and
dude that maybe like
I
the
felt beautiful in
darkness
it.
came up in his mid
stupid
50s
as that sounds, I
where
felt
he
pretty in this
is,
dress at the
a
job, and
hypocrite. But there's so much
I
to
showed
that I
him
don't
because
get.
it's a carpet, it's red carpet, so it's like publicized, and I kind of thought it was weird. He wasn't saying anything about it. I left him to go do this red carpet, and I was like, "Did you see the event I went to?" Basically, I felt pretty, and I thought, like, "Did you see that?" I wanted him to say something about that, I guess. And he said, "Well, this is after he stopped talking to me for some time, didn't tell me why. When he came back in my life, he wouldn't explain why he was acting different. He just kind of acted mad at me, didn't know what I had done wrong. And when I brought up the dress and the event, because it was an event to support a charity I was really involved with at the time, and I said, did you see that thing? And he said, yeah, I think the whole world saw that kid. That's how they'll remember you. That's how the world will remember you. And I was like, oh, come on. I mean, it's like, but I felt good in it. I felt good. And he said, yeah, kid, that's what you're putting out there in the world. No one will ever forget that. And that's all they'll see you as. And that's what you wanted. That's what you were going for. My dress was slow cut. I get it. Slow cut. But I felt, I felt really embarrassed and horrible that I wore that. I felt like, how could I have made that choice? Of course, he's right. You start to believe it. I started to believe that made a lot of sense, of course. But it didn't stop at that.
This is supposedly the dress that she's
clothing in
talking
general.
about?
When I walked out of the house, it wasn't just like, hey, you're not allowed to wear that. It was like, oh, really? That's what you're wearing. No wonder you get cast in those roles. No wonder you that's what you are. That's what you're making it. And it continued. And then there would be a blow up. And at first it was just to throw something, smash some things. He loves to smash up a place, an apartment, furniture. That's what it started with. Threw glass at me, and I remember it was summer. And he just threw this glass across the kitchen, and it didn't hit me, but it shattered behind me, and I remember thinking that it very easily could have hit me. And that, calling me a whore, it didn't start with using the whore word, it was just comments, until it would escalate. And then I started to notice the pattern of escalation where he'd throw glass or turn over a table, then he would hit the wall.
We got a friend
and then
coming in,
really close
everybody.
to my head. Like when I'm standing there, just hit the wall, screaming at me. But then he would disappear and get clean and sober, and he'd come back and tell me.
Hello, Kenny.
He was done drinking. He was over it.
You there?
Cleaned himself up. He'd done it before, and he'd do it again. And then he would go back to this wonderful, almost just unreal,
Kenny Teets
real,
joining in on the live stream.
Unbelievably nice, sensitive.
Well,
kind,
you sent me an invite, so I might as well join.
interesting,
All
funny
right,
man
I've
that
been kind of
and
like
he would
playing catch up
make
with
me feel
I've been
so
doing the catch up
loved, I
version
feel
of
so distant from
the
that
Amber
thing.
Heard
It was
Johnny
so
Depp
scary.
trial.
I would-
Kind of giving people the cast of characters that are involved in this thing. So if you don't know, that's Kate James. She's got a very dominatrixy vibe, Kenny. That's where I've been with her. Let me pull up day one because I wanted to kind of give people the idea of who, we're already deep into this trial. I think a lot of people popped into the trial. You probably heard of Isaac Baruch.
Your body's only healthy when your hormone.
Let's see. Oh, this is day one. So this is Eileen Bredhoff. And she's a person, all right. She's Amber Heard's worst attorney, is what I like to call her. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I'm eating something.
Kenny's having snacks. What kind of snacks?
I had a York peppermint patty.
Ooh. So yeah, this is Eileen Bredhoff. I'll give you some of the main characters of this, right? Amber Heard.
Yeah, I haven't really been keeping up with this. I've been only kind of seeing articles a little here and there.
Yeah, so this is Amber Heard. She's the one who possibly pooped in bed. That's Fayborn. That's her best attorney, but he really only gets used for stupid stuff. Let's see if I can pull up. This is Benjamin Chu. He's kind of the lead of Johnny Depp's team. This is Camille Velasquez. This is his female attorney that is going to be doing the direct for. She did the direct for Johnny Depp. She's also going to be doing the cross for Amber Heard when we come back on Monday. Because right now, this week, We are in a little bit of a break right now. The court's on. The court's kind of blacked out a little bit of a hiatus. They're on call it like spring break, if you will. And then basically this row where you see back here where this dude is, the dude who looks like he just turned like 20, and the people right next to him, that's all of Johnny Depp's team going forward. These two tables, Johnny Depp's got like at least a half dozen attorneys. This is costing him probably like $2,000 to $3,000 an hour minimum. And then this is Rottenborn. This is the guy who objected to his own question that people make fun of him for, even though it really wasn't that big of a deal. This is, again, Eileen Bredhoff, who's kind of, that, like I said before, Amber Heard's most meh attorney. She's got the meh face all the time.
You also said she wasn't really the best, I think you were also mentioning.
Yeah, well, what happened is that she's the one who, like, she'll argue with the judge. She'll get denied on something with a hearsay exception that she doesn't quite understand, like the business records exception. And then still tries to, like, you know, sandwich in some hearsay with it. So she doesn't do a great job, is what I'm saying. She's also been a big part of this case. So that's kind of the negative side of it. She is like one of the main drivers. I think she's the backup quarterback. I think she's the lead counsel in the case. Like, her name is usually on the top of all the paperwork. So, Ron Bourne's got a pretty decent style. The two of them did the opening, and then the two of these two did the opening for Depp's side. I'll pull up Chu. I did a little bit of the opener.
Was designed to recast herself as an abuse survivor, with Mr. Depp as the alleged abuser.
So yeah, their argument here is that this is the role of a lifetime.
6 days after Mr. Depp requested a divorce, and he did so politely, and 3 days after Ms. Heard's lawyer threatened Mr. Depp with claims of abuse if he did not agree to her financial demands.
So this has been going on for
what? At the courthouse.
3 weeks? 4 weeks now?
We are, 3 weeks of trial. We're on break this week.
And then they're going for a 4th week next week.
Yeah, and that'll start on Monday. They break this up. Each side had two attorneys do the opening. I think it was fine. I think Depp's team did a little bit better. I actually thought Heard, if they just stuck with Heard's first attorney, they didn't really need to do a lot more. You know, again, this is Camille Velasquez. She's the one who kind of starts, the way she handles the opening. They kind of split the opening for Depp's team where, you know, Benjamin Chu kind of like, and by the way, you could tell Benjamin Chu, as this case goes on, clearly likes Johnny Depp. And this happens when you are an attorney and you're dealing with these cases and you're dealing with them for a long time. You become kind of friendly with your clients. Like, it is, you were in the foxhole with them. You were their advocate here. So really good attorneys end up being friendly with their clients. They end up being that guy's best friend in the courtroom. That's why I like Benjamin Chu here. That's why I like Camille Velasquez, because they both have been very nice to Johnny, and they both have shown like a very strong affection for the guy in the courtroom, and I think that helps his case too, and I think the jury sees that. The jury is on this side of the room, so that's why you're seeing her over here. She's got a lapel mic on. She's reading from some notes, and she is the one that's going up there and going at, and this is the woman who it's going to be all bets are off come Monday or Tuesday. And when we go to cross-examination, because she's the one who's going to be cross-examining Amber Heard. We've already had 2 days of Amber Heard's testimony. Johnny Depp's side has rested their case. Any of the big motions, Benjamin Chu has been arguing, so you can kind of tell he's kind of the main dude in this case.
Relationship. Miss Heard spun the final encounter between them into a tale of domestic.
I mean, it's kind of hard to defend somebody if you don't like them.
Now I understand.
Or at least have somewot mutual respect for them.
Why?
I mean, you can. There are people who do it. You don't have to like your clients. There are a lot of people who don't like their clients.
You gotta have at least mutual respect for them.
Even if you don't
Why
like
would
them.
she make
Well,
up
money,
the
you know,
detailed,
Kenny, money buys
dramatic
respect.
tales of abuse
Money
that
buys
you
a
will
lot of
surely
things.
hear in this courtroom over the coming weeks.
And this is a big public trial.
By the end of this trial,
This guy's wondering what he
you
did
will
with his
have the
life.
answer to that question.
He's like, I could have been a
The
movie
evidence
star.
will show exactly who Ms.
He's like,
Heard is.
I should be the lead counsel.
You will hear from Mr. Depp and other witnesses.
So yeah, this is the opening
including
statement. They're
your
kind
marriage
of,
counselor,
you're not
Dr.
supposed.
Lowell Anderson,
There's definitely a different style
Ms.
here
Heard
in
would
what
go
they
to
do.
great
They
lengths
kind of
and
do.
even
It's the
resort
difference
to
between
physical
porn and
violence
eroticism
to
here.
stop Mr.
They
Depp
kind of
from
like
leaving.
etch out a little bit of
But
what they're going to
once
go
Mr.
do, but
Depp did
they
leave,
don't mention
Ms.
every
Heard
bit of
tried to
like
avoid
shocking
public
evidence that's going to help them,
humiliation
right?
and
They don't
present
mention the
herself
pooping in the bed
as a
here.
noble
They could.
survivor
It'd be
and
shocking, but they wait
representative
because they
of
want the
Me Too
jury
movement.
to kind of lean
You
in
will
and be like,
hear
what else are we going to
evidence,
find
including
out
the testimony
in
of
Johnny
Ms.
Depp's
Heard's
testimony?
former personal
What are we going to
assistant,
find out
Kate
throughout the rest of
James,
this case?
that Ms. Heard
And
is
you know, as he
obsessed
presents
with the public
corroborating
image.
witnesses, again, he's
It's
had
her number
multiple
one
corroborating
priority.
witnesses for
And you
all
will
the
see
different
evidence
events that have gone
that after
on.
she received a $7 million
You know,
divorce settlement
we've only
from
seen
Mr.
two
Depp,
witnesses on Amber
Ms.
Heard's
Heard
side, and
released
one of
a
them is Amber
public
Heard. So
statement claiming
it's
she
and the other one was an
nothing
expert
from him
witness. So we
and
really
would
don't have
donate
any
the entire
factual
settlement
witnesses
to
that
2
aren't
years.
Amber Heard who have testified so
The
far
Children's Hospital
to
of
Amber
Los
Heard's
Angeles
account
in
outside
California,
of some of the
and the
agreed upon
American
depositions
Civil
that were
Liberties League, also known as
presented
the
during
ACLU.
Johnny Depp's half of the case. Because you could do this
But
thing.
then
Let's remember I was
she
showing you
did-
Kate James before. This woman, they pre-recorded this. They did this deposition. They chose pieces of it they were going to leave in and leave out. They came to an agreement, and then they submitted it. And this is basically playing in
For
front of the
one,
jury and in front of
at some
the
point
attorneys
after
there.
he split up from Ms. Heard.
And
Did you meet up with Mr. Depp for red wine around the time period of this text on August 13th, 2016?
I did meet up with him, but we did not drink red wine. No.
Was anyone else present for that meeting?
No.
When he said, come over for a spot of purple and we'll fix her flabby ass, you understood him to be referring to Miss Heard when he said, we'll fix her flabby ass, correct?
Yeah, it wasn't for me to speculate what he was referring to.
And I'm not asking for you to speculate what he was referring to. I'm asking for your understanding was that he was talking to Miss Heard, correct? You can answer.
There isn't an answer. I mean, this is the way he writes. It's very random, and you don't sort of question it. Okay, it's just the way he writes. He writes in a very abstract way.
Okay, Lucian, if you can just pull up the prior testimony that we just looked at. Ms. James, isn't it true that?
So when does this trial come to a complete end? What, next Thursday?
It should come to a complete end Friday, May 27th is supposed to be closing arguments.
And then however long it takes
for the jury
for
to
the
deliberate.
jury. Yeah.
So I think her deposition was kind of interesting, but I think a lot of these depositions kind of get lost on the jury a little bit. They're not always sure where they're supposed to be going. And I think a lot of the depositions, one of the big problems with these pre-recorded depositions is they are often done by it's Amber Heard's side doing it first. So like you can hear right now, it's Rottenborn, who is Amber Heard's attorney, who is doing the examination of Kate James, because this is Johnny Depp's witness. And it will be the exact same when it'll be the inverse when it comes to video depositions on the other side, probably, unless somebody's being brought in kind of hostily.
Are you having audio come through? Because I'm not hearing the audio from the video come through.
No, I paused the video.
Yeah, even when you're playing it, I'm not hearing any of the audio from the YouTube video.
Oh, you're not hearing it? Oh.
No.
I wonder. Let me see what I
got.
It
was very silent as you were listening to it, and I was just kind of watching the picture move.
All right. I think I have to share my audio with you because you're on Zoom. So, hang on one sec.
If you're doing this elsewhere, that's fine.
I mean, it's up on the YouTube. You should have the audio on the YouTube. But let me see. I have security, share screen, audio, leave computer audio. All right, let me know if this works now.
did not make the donations.
Can you hear that?
Quite simply, Ms. Heard had publicly cast herself in the role of a domestic abuse survivor. There was no going back. When Ms.
Can you hear that? Kenny? Hello?
Hello?
Did I lose you?
I don't think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Thought I couldn't hear you for a bit.
Well, I was kind of looking around YouTube and I had my mic muted. So, is it on your page?
Yeah, it's on my page.
Punk Law 101.
It'll be on the Wildebeest Wojo one, Brojo Death Punch, all that stuff. The video should be live right now. That's why I should just use StreamYard and make it all easier on me. Because right now I'm using Zoom into OBS into Restream. So
We'll remind you what this case is about. We'll remind you that this case is about one piece of paper.
Here it is.
But yeah, I had just gotten through doing the opening arguments. Let's see if we can get to.
And I'm holding her, kind of comforting her, and Johnny comes in, and within a few seconds, I realize that he, kind of shifted his attention on me, and then he seemed very angry. He asked Lily Rose to leave. Lily Rose leaves, looks at me, leaves, crying. In the larger glass is, I believe at the time I was doing these.
Could you tell the jury what happened on that Friday night?
I don't know how many times he hit me, but my best way to cope with it is I kind of, minimize it, make sure no one, make sure he knows that I'm tough and can't knock me down, and I make a joke of it. Clearly, make light.
I'm going to Michelle.
Feel real with her is when she's testifying about the abuse. Can you hear it now?
With and
yeah,
it was
I'm watching.
Well, at the time, a painting I had hanging on the wall.
Yours? No, I'm watching
my ex,
on YouTube.
who's an artist. That was one day he was convinced that was proof of sleeping with her.
I'll just hear you double.
I didn't really love him, and all the while I'm madly in love with him and trying to convince him. So March started with this picture of him.
Your mic is really
shot,
low
and he's
now.
saying, "Let's send it to
My
your dad."
mic is really low?
And what I remember of March is just.
All right.
There we go. Now it's back to normal.
It's almost like it was a never-ending
all right.
fight.
Yeah,
it was just, there were breaks in it. What kept me in it is because I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, the sobriety shoe, if you will. I kept waiting for him to get to the point where it's not supportable or anymore, and had decided that the painting was an offense that he could not forgive me for. It meant I was having an affair with my
she's talking about a
ex-partner,
painting
whom I'd already split, with whom I'd already split.
apparently
It
from
made
her
no sense to me,
ex,
so
and she
I'm
tried
trying to
lighting
kind
the
of quell
painting on
accusations by
fire.
saying,
He tried lighting the
it's been
painting on
there,
fire
and
with a
what are you talking
Zippo.
about? And it's like, that doesn't mean anything. And, he was demanding I take it down. He eventually takes it down and tries to burn it, but it was unsuccessful, luckily, because he was not, he wasn't, with one of those normal, what do you call them, fake lighters, he wasn't very successful at doing it while drinking.
Yeah, but he had alcohol there, lady.
It was this kind of
you could burn shit with alcohol.
I didn't feel like it needed to be.
And you even see he's kind of like laughing a little bit to that.
Nothing I could say. I tried leaving. I left the room. I left the house. I eventually came back. It was like a whole night, an evening, a night, and then a morning of this. So this morning in particular, I think it was a 22nd
An evening,
of March.
a night, and then
there were
a
several
morning.
incidents in March though. But in this particular one, he had something to go to. He was filming with Keith Richards and Tom Waits.
But let me, before you go into that part, let's pull up Defendant's Exhibit 161, which is already admitted into evidence, I believe, Your Honor.
Yes, 161 with redactions.
Thank you. And I'm going to.
He was really confused as to what he was being yelled at by Johnny. But I remember those are the accusations. That was the fight. But it was one to the next accusation. And I remember I was kind of doing that juggling act. I was in one of these fights, I believe it's this one, in his downtown ECB, we call it loft. And we're in the kitchen living room area, and he backhands me. And, it he wears a lot of rings. I remember kind of just feeling like my
This is
lip
one of
went
the
into my
2
teeth.
times she actually has like
And,
picture
got a little
evidence that
blood
she
on the wall.
provided,
It-
but also
just
there's a question
that
with the
simple, little
metadata
bit of
for
blood on the
all
wall.
the evidence, all the picture
As
evidence,
hard
or
as it
most
is-
of the picture evidence that she's provided.
As hard as it
and
is to explain this.
they might get that's why they're able to keep out a lot of
I was so
the
caught up in the
evidence that her side's providing.
relationship and
because
also
they
very
did not,
occupied in defending what I only could
complete
assume and
discovery.
believe these accusations. That I didn't internalize, like I didn't make that big of a deal of it. I kind of pride myself on being tough, and I don't make a big deal out of smaller injuries. And I know that sounds horrible because and hard maybe to understand, but my best way to cope with it is I kind of minimize it, make sure no one make sure he knows that I'm tough and can't knock me down, and I make a joke of it. Clearly, make light.
I'm going to, Michelle, if you can take this one down and bring up 170A. Did there come a time in March, Amber, where you sent a picture to your mom?
Yes, this is sometime in March 2013. I sent it to her because I'd been texting about some of the craziness, and
Objection, hearsay.
I'll sustain as to what she may have texted. All right, next question.
Without saying what you said in the text, explain why you were sending it to your mom.
I was reaching out. I was very lonely in what I was living in, and I wanted help. I wanted advice, help. I just wanted to talk to somebody and figure out how I could make this stop.
And is this a picture that you took of yourself in March of 2013?
I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 170A.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, 178 in evidence.
And there's a reason why they're not objecting to this. And watch. So she's saying this is after she got smacked in the face, supposedly. There's this bruise right here, and her face looks fine. So I'm not quite sure what we're looking at, like why we're looking at this.
How did you sustain that bruise, Amber?
I had thrown Johnny slapped me. I walked away from him, and that made it worse. We got into like a shouting match. And he kind of did this thing with his body where I could tell he was going to hit me again. I picked up I remember kind of like a little pot, not a pot, but like a vase. And I remember I got away from him.
Yeah, it kind of just looks like the contours of her face,
and actually managed to get away
with the shadow
before he got me.
Not
he grabbed me by the
really
arm, and he kind of just held me on the floor, screaming at me. I don't know how many times he hit me in the face, but I remember being on the floor in my apartment.
He hit you in the
and
face,
just-
but you have a bruise on your arm.
I remember thinking, how could this happen to me again?
Can you bring up 170?
And like again, this is kind of very serious, so it's kind of weird.
Thank you, Michelle. And
that this is
and
all
if we
kind of
can-
like the
and
way that
just
they've
for-
handled a lot of this.
To start at 3/23/2013.
Yeah. See what
Scroll up. This is a text message exchange with your mom, correct? Who did you tell?
I told my therapist. I eventually told my mom.
And let's go ahead and take a look at.
Okay, so
Defendant's
this is,
Exhibit
I moved
150.
back a little bit because this is the first incident.
Interesting, funny man that I loved.
Back to the filming of the Lone Ranger. What, if anything, did Mr. Depp do with respect to a horse?
Objection, leading.
What, if anything?
Overruled.
What if anything?
Was one. It was dirty that I wanted to do this job that I wanted to do, and I was doing the job of an actress. It was everything things. He loves to smash up a place, an apartment, furniture. That's what it started with. Glass. Threw glass at me, and I remember it was summer. He bitch. And he slapped me again. Like, he was joking. And slapped me across the face. And I laughed. Interesting, funny man that I loved. And he would make me feel so loved. Like I would feel so distant from that thing that was so scary that I would not even recognize it too. And that was how, our relationship kind of started to develop in that first year.
Do you remember the first time that he physically hit you?
Yes.
Please tell the jury about it.
It was it's seemingly so stupid, so insignificant. I will never forget it. It changed my life. I was sitting on the couch, and we were talking. We were having a normal conversation. Just there was no fighting, no argument, nothing. And he was drinking, and I didn't realize at the time, but I think he was using cocaine because it was like there was a jar of cocaine out on the table. I realized it sounds weird, but it's like an actual vintage jar of it. But I didn't see him use it at the time, so I didn't really factor that in. I just, he's drinking and we're talking.
Yeah, just like a mason jar full of cocaine.
Smoking cigarettes. And
sure, he wasn't making
making
pancakes. And some flour.
I asked him about the tattoo he has on his arm. And to me, it just looked like black marks. I didn't know what it said. It just looked like muddled, faded tattoo that was hard to read.
Mojo, what's the street value of a jar of cocaine?
Said it says wino.
I mean, I'm sure Johnny Depp can pay for it. He's got over like $100 million. He's got his own island.
Because it didn't look like it said that at all, and I laughed. It was that simple. I just laughed because I thought he was joking, and slapped me across the face, and I laughed. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. I thought this must be a joke. This must be a joke, because I didn't know what was going on. I just stared at him, kind of laughing still, thinking that he was going to start laughing too to tell me it was a joke, but he didn't. He said, "You think it's so funny? You think it's funny, bitch? You think you're a funny bitch?" And he slapped me again.
That sounds like the lyrics to a song.
I was clear. It wasn't a joke anymore. And I stopped laughing, but I didn't know what else to do.
It's like a Freudian. It's a Freudian.
You would think you would have a response, but I have never been hit like that. I'm an adult, and I'm sitting next to the man I love, and he slapped me for no reason, it seemed like, and I missed the point. It was that stupid. Second slap, I know he's not kidding, but I don't know what else to say or do, so I just stared at him. I didn't say anything. I didn't react. I didn't move or freak out or defend myself or say, "What are you doing? You're crazy." I just stared at him because I didn't know what else to do. And he slaps me one more time. Hard. I lose my balance. At this point, we're sitting next to each other on the edge of the couch, or I was on the edge of the couch. And I'm all of a sudden realizing that the worst thing has just happened to me that could possibly happen to you. I realize that I wish so much he had said he was joking, because it didn't hurt. It didn't physically hurt me. I was just sitting there on this carpet, looking at the dirty carpet, wondering how I wound up on this carpet and why I never noticed that the carpet was so filthy before, and I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. I just sat there thinking, how much time do I have to figure out what I need to do? Because, God, did he just hit me? No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to have a man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. I'm not dumb. I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just hit somebody because I knew it was wrong, and I knew that I had to leave him. And that's what broke my heart, because I didn't want to leave him. I thought if I got up out of that room, I would leave the best thing that ever happened to me. And I wish I could sit here and say I stood up and I walked out of that house and I drew a line and I stood up for myself. But I was just looking at the dirty carpet, trying to will myself to get up, to walk.
And this is the thing that a lot of people have said about this, is that she's not focusing on the pain. She's not talking about how it felt. She's focusing on a weird detail that, like, most people wouldn't, like, that's not typical of, like, what a victim would, like, go through. They talk about the feeling of it. And not to say you can't process things differently. It's possible that, but as we get through more and more of her testimony, it gets worse. It gets even, like, this isn't that convoluted. It's weird. It's awkward. It's clunky. It doesn't quite make sense. It sounds like something you would hear in a movie. And there's a lot of that in her testimony. So, but then you get to the bigger allegations, and it becomes even more farcical a little bit. It becomes a little weird. And again, we don't, I'm not there. I'm not, but again, like, a lot of her testimony is, it's weird and clunky and awkward, and I get, like, I'm not trying to knock her on you know, but like in both these incidences, you know, this is somebody who took like a half dozen pictures of Johnny Depp sleeping, but doesn't have a single picture that like corroborates the violence or the level of violence she alleges. So there's an incident in Australia I'm going to try and pull that one up. It's a pretty horrific case. It's a pretty horrific story.
I almost feel like too, it's like in that situation, I feel like you would take, you know, in a victim's, you know, as you were saying with another type of standard victim case, they'd be starting to cry like really at the start of all that because it'd be like tough to be able to process.
Well, and that was something else that people also brought up, was that she really hasn't cried, or when she does cry, she recovers very quickly. Like, not like how you would not how.
Yeah, I felt like when she started to say like she got slapped the first time, like I can understand that, like you can get through that. But then as soon as you start saying that he slapped you a second time and a third time, I feel like you would start to have emotions come up because it's not something that you want. You know, it's like not something you want to like remember. You don't want to, you know, recall it. And it's like it almost hurts you to remember it.
Well, and the other thing I found very weird about it is that, like, she's saying it doesn't hurt. Almost every time she talks about these instances, she almost has too much pride to admit that something hurt. And I don't know if that's that's not a typical victim response. Victims don't usually have, like, there's not like, that's like, yeah, you usually have some kind of pride aspect to it, but it's not like that, where she's so proud she doesn't want to admit that getting hit hurt. And it's kind of a weird response. Just like she's kind of like, you know, like she, again, like, it sounds like a character in a movie about domestic violence than an actual, like, it's how somebody would write about domestic violence if they weren't experiencing domestic violence, it feels like. Like, maybe she should have researched the character more. It's just, it feels almost like it's too clunky. And again, there's now this story, and the problem is you're watching, Kenny, you're watching this and you haven't seen all of the other testimony, but at this point, the jury has seen about 20 witnesses who corroborate different events that go completely contrary to all this stuff. So, you know, it's trying to figure out where all this lands, who, you know, who's lying. And right now, without her providing another witness, it doesn't look good for her. It's so, you know, again, we're going to get to this part of it where
I feel like she almost thought it was going to be a slam dunk and that she didn't really need, I don't know if she didn't think that she needed so much evidence, but I feel like she wasn't prepared for what Johnny Depp had as like true.
Well, how many there's the thing. The thing with Johnny Depp's witnesses is either they're corroborating minute details that affect the overall narrative. So, for instance, maybe the ones that are more biased, that are more financially tied to his livelihood, like him having money and making money and continuing to do well. There's more that are tied to, like, yeah, there's plenty of them that are tied to him. He's got a bodyguard that, you know, he's got a few bodyguards who testify in this case. His island manager testifies to a couple of, like, specific details surrounding an incident where she threw a mineral spirits can at him, allegedly, where she's saying that he attacked her and sexually assaulted her. But if you listen to the island, the person who works at the island, it does, like, there's no way to walk away from that testimony and go, yeah, I think she's lying about this, because it didn't make like, it's information she didn't have to lie about. It's information that it's like, if she was lying, she could have just pretended she didn't hear anything while they were in the building. That's why it's like there's certain things that it's like his corroborating witnesses aren't corroborating that every incident that she is talking about is fake, but because there's so many of these incidences that she's alleging, and that there's a witness here or a witness there. There's an incident where she punched him, and she alleges that she punched him because he was going to knock her sister down the stairs, And there's a bodyguard there who says that's not anywhere near true. I was in between the two of them, and Whitney was nowhere between by us. So it doesn't. Whitney's her sister. Her sister Whitney, if she doesn't testify, is going to be a big problem for Amber Heard because she's one of the few eyewitnesses to any of the incidences. And at this stage, I'm very curious about how that gets handled because she did not complete her deposition. So she's allegedly seen one of these incidences where there was some kind of level of violence, but the only third-party witness we have to that level of violence is Travis McGivern, who came off as a very credible witness, came off as very solemn that he failed his client and that Johnny Depp got hit with a Red Bull can and got punched in the face, and he felt like he should have broken it up earlier and he should have separated him sooner. And I just think that there's too many of these corroborating witnesses that are there who know all these details. Now, does that mean he never hit her? I don't know. But what I do think what's going to end up happening is her side's going to argue if there's one instance of domestic violence in this case that he has to lose. Except for the fact that that's why there's a big fight over the title. Basically, there's three statements that they're focusing on from the article. One of them's the headline, right? The header that was on the was Amber Heard's. So Amber Heard, op-ed. We'll see if that hopefully pulls it up. I spoke up against sexual violence, and this is the header that is a big part of this case, right? I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change, by Amber Heard. This is going to be a big thing because her side's argued that she didn't write the headline. Washington Post wrote this headline, and that's why there's also a difference between the print and this version. Johnny Depp's side says, well, she retweeted it, she's endorsed it, and now she's alleging sexual violence where she previously didn't allege it before. So it's going to be hard to walk that back now. You can't argue that she didn't mean to defame him with the sexual violence statement if you are also trying to counter-argue that, yes, I also happen to have been sexually assaulted multiple times in this relationship. Those are two, I understand, attorneys trying to argue in the alternative, but juries don't think that way. And that's why there's strategy to how you handle a lot of this. And I think that if there's anything that he can win on, it's that. Now, that's one of the charges that we'll see if that makes it all the way to the end and what ends up supporting that. I just don't know how. I think what's going to end up happening is the jury's going to look at it and go, well, who do we find more believable? Who's supported by more third-party witnesses? Who in their testimony came off as believable? Johnny Depp, in his testimony, came off like a believable witness. He came off like a victim of domestic violence. His testimony was very, how would I describe it? He was very, sullen, very paced with how he spoke. His testimony came off like he was, his issue is he's got substance abuse issues, but he's never hurt anybody because of the substance abuse issues is what he's going to allege. And her side is saying, well, how can we rely upon your perception of events? You were on drugs. And they are trying to make his substance abuse an issue in this trial and make his substance abuse part of him being a villain. I don't know if that's a great strategy. I think in the end that might blow up on them, especially if somebody in the jury knows people who've dealt with substance abuse. There's a big part of this case that has to do with him going through withdrawal and from opioids because he was prescribed oxycodone for a back injury, and he had to get off of it, and he had a hard time getting off of it, and he sought out an addiction therapist. So, and again, there's a lot of let's see if I can find Johnny Depp's testimony. Is this the I mean, technically, this is testimony right here. I don't know how much of that's going to be. And honestly, I think he is just better at telling the story. I think when he is talking, people are lingering on his words. They like him. He's likable. He is, he's kind of witty when he's on cross-examination. He handles cross-examination well.
There's physical
No, I don't want
violence,
to. I don't
there's
want to win a
physical
Hellcat.
abuse, to which she was. That was a constant.
This is him
That was
talking
just
about
a
his mother
constant, you know.
being violent when he was a kid.
Of his perception of his family.
On that road, I had been placed on that road. Received the screenplay for Pirates, and it was I somehow in my mind I.
So, if you had asked me like 2 or 3 weeks ago where I thought this case was, and if I thought Johnny Depp had a shot in winning, I would have put it at maybe 1 out of 10. Now I think he's got a pretty good shot. I really do. I think he legit has an option. He has an actual ability to win this, and I think it's because Amber Heard's testimony didn't come off that believable. His witnesses corroborated a lot of different events that weren't all interceding, but he has a lot of people around him, like multiple bodyguards. He had a nurse that was helping him with addiction. He has the person who manages his island. There were people who witnessed different parts of these events, like his friend Isaac Baruchiel, I believe was on day 2 of the trial. Oh, that's this guy right here. Isaac Baruch. This is like Joe Praisner. If Joe Praisner was an artist and one of us was millionaires. Kenny. That's who Isaac is.
Interesting.
He lives in Johnny's penthouse. He paints. Johnny helps support him. Then when Johnny sold the penthouses, he moved him to the other house that he has in LA. So again, like he's Johnny's, good friend that lives next door, and he witnessed a couple of different parts of the event. He saw Amber Heard the day after the event that led to the TRO, that led to this all becoming publicized, that eventually 2 years down the line, she went ahead and wrote an op-ed about. So he saw her the next day, said that he saw it, they were like doing something, and then he had asked about it, and they said, oh, Johnny punched her. He went up to her, looked at her, and said, I don't see a mark. So he very much was, they have a lot of corroborating witnesses. There's another guy who, the front desk employee of the penthouse, who has no connection to Johnny Depp outside of working at the penthouse, who everybody kind of made a big deal about because he had this moment where he drove off after the deposition while vaping. This guy.
I mean, he's not doing anything illegal.
No, it was just funny because he's like, you could tell that he's done with this shit.
When I got there on Monday, they asked me, "Oh, you heard what happened?" And I said, "No."
Sure, people ask him all the time, like certain things that are going on.
Then I went to the cameras and see what was.
But he said he saw Amber Heard like over the next few days after this event happened, and he said, I did not see any bruising. She did not look like she had makeup. Even if she had makeup on, there wasn't any swelling. So, and you could tell he's tired of this stupid case that it's been going on. This was recorded last year, a year ago. But, he's tired of this stupid case. It's 2 millionaires fighting over, millions and millions of dollars. Meanwhile, he's probably making 50, 60 grand a year. So, he's like, why am I being brought into their BS? And then you have, again, like, I think that there's a lot of this that, it's going to be interesting when we come back next week, right, and see where this goes and see where this trial goes. I definitely think Johnny Depp's testimony came off as believable. He came off as contrite when he did something wrong or said something wrong. He admitted it, whereas, like, when I listened to Amber Heard's testimony, I'm not going to pretend to be a body expert. I'm not going to pretend to be a person who knows how people, like I don't think there's a such thing as being able to tell what's in somebody's heart in that way. I don't think like people's body language changes because people, there are people who are not typical people. So I just don't think she's one of those. I think the issue with her is her stories just have giant plot holes in them, and they're inconsistent, and the evidence that she's trying to provide doesn't even support it. Again, there's an alleged incident where she said she had 2 black eyes and a broken nose. There's twice during this, her testimony where she alleges she has a broken nose, but she doesn't talk about how it feels to have a broken nose or what kind of care it took for her to have a broken nose. There's an incident that happens in Australia, which I believe that's what this was going to be.
I was so looking forward to the beach aisle, and I think I was in the shower at the time.
I feel like if you have
but
a
not much
broken
time
nose, you end up going to the doctor anyway, and then they have some kind of written form.
Well, Kenny,
or
that's the
some
problem.
Kind of receipt.
That's really it. It's that there's no medical record of anything. Like, even if you're a DV victim, DV victims do go to the hospital, especially when the injuries are bad enough. She's an actress. Part of her acting is her nose. Like, you can't have a busted nose while you're trying to act in a movie.
Yeah.
And there's no medical record of it. There's no, when she got hit, there's no packing of it. There's no, I had to put ice on it or something, or it bled, or how long it was bleeding. So, and that's a real thing. Like that's the problem with a lot of her testimony. It's, I cut up, I was stepping in glass. I was, but there, how you would have, like, you're saying you were stepping in glass, you were barefoot, you were naked, you would have scrapes of glass all over you.
You would literally have to go to the hospital if you stepped in glass, because it'd be wedged in your foot so much that you couldn't walk.
Exactly. And there was no blood it wasn't that much blood all over the place. There's an incident that happened in Australia where Johnny Depp lost a bit of his finger. So, I mean, that happened, but there's differing stories as to how that happened, and that's kind of the issue right now is, there's like about 4 or 5 incidences that happen, and there's different testimony to go around on it. The Australia incident's a big incident. It's allegedly Amber Heard threw a bottle of vodka at Johnny Depp after they had an argument about a prenup, and then Johnny fell off the bandwagon and drank some alcohol, and she got mad. She threw a bottle of vodka at his head and missed, and she threw another bottle of vodka at him. It hit his hand, it shattered, and it broke the bone in the hand, and from the glass shattering, it chopped off a bit of his finger.
And does he have medical records from that?
Yes, there's plenty of medical records from that. That's the point. The only evidence we have of one of them being injured in a domestic dispute is Johnny Depp. Now, he covered for her back then, and that's what he said, is like, listen, we didn't put it in writing that that she caused, she chopped my finger off, because I don't want her, being arrested. I didn't want to deal with the media frenzy. This is still somebody I love. Basically, Johnny Depp was the DV victim here, and that's kind of what his argument is right now. And a lot of the evidence goes to that. And there's audio recordings, tons of audio recordings, a legit amount of audio recordings that, again, really do seem to go to Johnny Depp's side. There's audio recordings that don't help him either, but there's not really one that really seals the deal for him. There's audio recordings where she sounds horrible. She sounds like a psychopath, saying, like, I didn't slap you, I didn't punch you, I hit you, go out and tell people that you're a victim of domestic violence. They won't believe you. Nobody's going to believe that, you're a man that's a victim of domestic violence. So, but this is all on recording, and I think she just had the hubris that she didn't think of this. It is pretty amazing stuff. It's a pretty interesting case. I understand that it's all over the place right now. Everybody's talking about it. It is going to be interesting to see where this goes. And I really do think, I initially didn't think Johnny Depp was going to win. I didn't think, but now I've heard her testimony, and again, she still has a little bit to go, but she hasn't provided any medical records. I really think we're going to get to Monday and we're going to come to cross-examination, and that's when it's really going to fall apart for her. I'm very intrigued to see where this goes. Her testimony came off very inconsistent, and again, this was on direct examination. These are your attorneys asking you questions. It doesn't make sense you had such a hard time testifying, and it was a mess. So,
Yeah, you're right. It's like I feel like if she did get her nose broken, she would do the same thing that Johnny did for her when she threw the bottle at him. Tried to cover it up, made some kind of thing where it's like, oh, I fell, I smacked my head against something, but you'd still have a medical record that I ended up going to the hospital because I broke my nose.
Yeah, and very curious to see what happens. I think tomorrow, I might do a little bit of a deep dive on each of their testimonies, like back and forth between him and her. His testimony took a long time because he speaks in a very sullen, solemn, slow pace, but you're always lingering on his words. He can meander, and people are still interested in what he's talking about. He speaks in a very flowery way. He's got a sense of humor that's very British and very, Monty Python, and that's a theme throughout everything he's doing. His attorneys are good, and they are impressively good. And her attorneys they have a strategy, but they always seem to like mess up at least once, like at a time, except for the one guy, Fairborn, seems to do pretty well.
They're not driving their point across, it seems like.
Or what happens is like, again, like he put up a psych expert to evaluate her because she alleges she has PTSD, and his psych expert, like they were trying to impeach his psych expert. They almost did a good job with it. And then they got stuck in the weeds on like an issue of like, did you tell your husband about, seeing Amber Heard? Well, what happened with these muffins? And they were, there's a video going around like, oh, like they fell down the muffin rabbit hole where it's like, do you know the Muffin Man? And it's like, this is totally worthless. But now the only thing anybody remembers about that testimony, the last bit of testimony, that like on cross-examination, the last bit on that cross-examination people will remember is the muffins, is the stupid frickin' muffins, and it's gonna make them look bad. So again, they just don't seem to have like a good strategy here. I was trying not to root for anybody at a certain point, but I think especially after you watch those first, her first two witnesses, her and her expert, which didn't, again, both of them kind of drew a visceral, I think they've drawn a visceral reaction. I think her testimony's drawn a visceral reaction because a lot of people who are victims of DV and sexual assault have said that it doesn't sound like a person who is a victim of DV or sexual assault. And that's like, I don't, you don't want to like write off something like that, but it's the details and it's the evidence that she has provided. It's the audio recordings that, again, she's belittling him, she's berating him, she's admitting to hitting him, and it is not helping. And it's all of that I think will eventually stack up to her losing this case, which I initially thought it was like a 1 in 10 shot. It's a hard thing to prove, defamation. But now where we are with her testimony, the audio clips that we've heard, his testimony, the corroborating witnesses, it's not to say that she couldn't get back into it. There's a couple of Hail Marys there. She has a couple of witnesses of her own, I believe. I still think it's going to be a really hard fight uphill. So I think we'll see what ends up happening. It's not to say that I think Johnny is totally innocent, but I think what's going to end up happening is the jury's going to say one of these two people are clearly lying, and it sounds right now like it's Amber Heard because of the evidence that she's putting forth and the arguments that she's putting forth, and her story doesn't quite line up, and there's plot holes, and there's, we've watched about 20 corroborating witnesses come forward and talk about this. So I'll be very intrigued to see what happens when we come back on day 16 of this on Monday. I'm going to try and do one tomorrow. I don't know because I also have an open mic to run and a couple of other things I got to do. I kind of want to start doing live streams and videos again on this because I had fun when I was doing it last year for football. I think this might be a good thing to talk about, some law stuff. I'll maybe go back to doing some football stuff eventually, but again, I just, his testimony comes off very likable and believable. Hers does not.
Walk out of the door because I knew I needed to. And I really slowly I stood up and I remember looking in.
The evidence is just pointing. At no point is this any of this situation any good, but it really shows that she really did kind of defame him.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think so. His argument that he made, and what they're gonna really try to hammer home in closing arguments is if there's one incidence of domestic assault or sexual assault, or one or the other, or really both, because you really technically need both for it to be for you to survive defamation on this. But he's going to argue that if there's one incidence, even if it's just verbal abuse, technically it should be that you guys find in favor of the defendant. Their argument's going to be she's a liar, liar, pants on fire, and you can't believe anything she says, that this is a performance of a lifetime, and that, listen, you heard it from their own expert, there's usually really only one abuser in a relationship, and we've heard audio that says that she's the abuser. We've where she's admitting and she's belittling him repeatedly, and we listened to her testimony, and that was her direct testimony that didn't sound good. Wait till you hear her cross, and they're gonna say Amber Heard's a liar who lies a lot. She lies all the time, and this is just another incidence of her lying. And you can't believe anything she said. And meanwhile, we provided corroboration